dedicated to female voices and leadership in tech. I'm very excited to be joining today to do a special episode, this time in person for the first time ever. And I'm joined today by a very, very special guest.
Very excited for today's talk. I'm Dagny. I'm the founder of Flow City. We are an ad tech business, although we took onto ourselves to innovate a very traditional media, which is out of home, outdoor. And we are, for the past 10 years, we are trying to apply best practices of the ad tech to out of home to enable easier brand building for more businesses than ever before.
That is quite impressive, and also trying to innovate a very traditional business is not easy. Being a woman leading a business is not always easy. How was that experience for you?
It was an experience, and it still is an experience. But thanks to that, we've got an opportunity to have a talk today about that. Because an industry is conservative and is not typically innovated by women, immigrant women, in what used to be also quite a conservative country, it doesn't mean it can't be done. Mm-hmm. It's not easy, but also if it was easy, maybe it wouldn't be worth doing.
That is a very good point. What do you think is what do you bring which is unique to the table? What do you think that allows you to maybe think differently and maybe then create this, facilitate for this innovation?
That's a very good question, and I can answer it really simply, or we can go deep. So the simple answer is my Polish background. Mm-hmm. From a very rational perspective, this was very helpful. I was able to get the best team. We were able to do a lot with little. Mm-hmm. If we compare ourselves to our counterparts in terms of the money raised and what we were able to achieve, because of my Polish background and contacts in Poland, I was able to get some of the top talent. So that's the very rational answer. If we want to go a little bit deeper, women are often thought of as being irrational, but at the same time risk averse. Mm-hmm. Well, you can have it both ways. You can either be risk averse or you can be irrational. Because risk is irrational. Taking risk is irrational. So, how being a woman helps me take risks, and also how can I make decisions that have to be made without data. Mm-hmm. It's something that being a woman, I find easier than my male counterparts. I will make that decision when there is no data, because if we have data, then my team can make the decision. They don't need to come for me. They don't need to come to me for the decisions that they can make themselves based on the data available. I make the decisions where a call has to be made, and I use my superpower, my intuition, for that. So, whilst we teaching our male counterparts how to use their intuition, their gut feeling, as women, we often try to block it and go very rational. Yeah. And I think there is a method in that as well. Yeah. But the superpower that I and all the women have is that naturally we can make very rational decisions based on intuition. And what I mean by that is intuition actually is based on data, but just like machine learning is based on the past data and it makes great prediction for exactly the same situation, intuition is more like AI. Mm-hmm. uses past data to draw conclusion on slightly different situations, because in business, from my experience, no two situations are exactly the same.
And how was the process of teaching that to men, to the male counterpart?
It's still in progress.
What do you think is the main challenge? Is this not in their wheelhouse?
Well, I think it all comes down to risk, and whether for women or men, taking risk is what brings rewards.
Yeah.
But by taking risk, I don't mean business risk. I don't mean risking well-being of your team. It's taking personal risks. So when you start taking personal risks, your team will see that, your male counterparts will see that, and they appreciate that, because now you've got the skin in the game, your personal skin. So this is, again, something that I teach to also female budding entrepreneurs, that you need to take personal risk if you want to be taken seriously. That risk may be just giving up your weekends to start with. That risk may be getting up at 5 a.m. or giving up something that is dear to you. That's a risk. You've already taken risk for unknown reward. That reward may never happen. But when we talk about risk, often we think risking company funds or being very bold with decisions. That is not what risk-taking in leadership means. It's risking your own reputation, the time that you're gonna commit. That's the kind of risk that I endorse.
That's really interesting, because I never thought about the investment as part of the risk, and I think I naturally gravitate towards that. Putting the time into things that I don't necessarily know will succeed. Putting them, waking up, working late. I was just doing it yesterday, both waking up early, working late. Very long day. But it just, I didn't necessarily thought of it. This is me putting skin in the game, but I think you're very right. This is part of saying, I'm committed to this, even though I don't know if it will succeed. Yeah. I believe in it. That's the point. That's where you're putting your, that's where you're risking it in the first place.
Yes, and people around you, male, female, your team, your investors, they will notice that. They'll take notice. So when you then say, I'm just gonna go with my intuition, they'll let you go with it because they've seen you risking it, taking personal risk. So we can conclude that actually there is always reward for risk, because you will get more responsibility.
I mean, if responsibility is what you're aiming for, I think that this is kind of like also a personal trait. My personal trait would be your personal trait. Right. If responsibility is what you're looking for, this is really basically how to get it. So talking about the company, we already started challenges of maybe trying to innovate a very traditional business. What were some of the main barriers that you faced when setting up the company, and how did you manage to overcome them?
The main barrier was setting myself high standards. Okay, so when you innovate business, you see yourself innovating it with those that are top of their game. That's the holy grail. That's where we want to aim. But understanding the risk for those that are top of their game means that you need to have a lot of proof that what you are innovating will actually add value to their business. So, to overcome that barrier, I lowered the expectations, and we went to integrate with any media owner that would have us, even if it meant developing some free software for them. The name of the game at the time was just to connect. And that's what we did. And this was means to an end to eventually connect to the biggest networks globally. But that took time. And whilst we were going for years to have meetings, which were being rescheduled at the last time.
I'm familiar with how this works.
You know, we used that time to gather the proof that we needed to be taken seriously.
And I think that that's what a lot of startups sometimes miss, and especially in the beginning, you have this, oh yes, we're going to work with all of the best, and like we're going to innovate. There's a lot of barriers to innovation. We think that people like innovation. Most people do not like innovation. Most companies do not like innovation. Is risk. People are risk. The bigger the company, the more risk adverse they normally are, and that understanding and acceptance of the journey that you'll go through as a startup, that you'll work with smaller companies, that you'll gather the proof, that you'll have to showcase everything, and you'll build up to the biggest, because these guys do not change easy, is something that I found to be always underestimated.
Sure, nor do they want to change. Why would they want to change? I mean, there are a few companies that are just excellent at constantly innovating and reinventing themselves, but most actually are trying to keep things the way they are for as long as possible, having a war chest to buy the inconvenient innovator if the time comes. But this is 90% of the time, this is the strategy. And just being aware of that helps you plan better, and helps you keep your feet on the ground as well.
I agree. I think that even the companies that we believe to be innovative, they innovate in a way that is comfortable for them. And it's also like something that they got used to. So it no longer feels like innovation in a way. It's just basically they innovate within what they're comfortable with. It's real innovation is when you're uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
When you're taking out of your comfort zone, because that's where you're really challenging yourself. But look at us as people. Change is hard. Breaking habits is hard. Trying new things is hard. So all of those things are really hard for us as people. Therefore, they're also hard for companies. Also in the startup space. So I think a lot about how do you get people to adopt new tech? How do you get people comfortable with being uncomfortable?
You don't. So there are really two ways to succeed, to get market share. You either do it cheaper than anyone else, or you do what others don't want to do. Two. So we did the second one. We made outdoor available to brands that wouldn't be serviced previously because it wouldn't make financial sense. It's as simple as that.
That's a very good point. I find it is tricking people into innovation, meaning making it feel less innovative. If you have a super innovative solution, make it feel less innovative. Not necessarily that it's not. The underground might still be super innovative, but what you're trying to create is that sense of like, this is actually not that big of a change. You can be comfortable. You can let it go, it's okay, it's more similar to what you're already doing, and that helps kind of reduce that barrier to feel, oh, this is too unfamiliar. So yeah, this is kind of like smaller steps towards that journey and not necessarily one big change at a time. Even though in our mind this is like super cool and super innovative and we should all go to space. I'm like, but who wants to live on Mars? Besides, I don't know, the one guy. Talking, this journey and innovation, like some of this personal conclusion. What do you think has been a pivotal moment in your career that kind of set you up on this trajectory of like building a company and achieving all that you've achieved?
So the idea for the business started in my head in the corporate world. And I went to pitch the idea to my boss at the time, who said in a very short sentence, he didn't say anything, he asked me a question. Is this, you want to do this here? That question said everything about my idea and pitch. And I didn't interpret it as a bad idea. He didn't say that this is bonkers. He just said, not here. And I think we all meet people on our journey that say very little, but when they say it, it just influences us. And that sentence is still with me today. It was a decade ago, but I still hear this in my head. And also this was a great advice for me when I later on went to pitch this to partners that we had to inevitably connect with, understanding that in the corporate world, this is not welcome. Unless we need to make it so attractive. It needs to be such a no-brainer for our tech to be adopted. So I think that changed me. Yeah, so that was my last corporate job.
And the rest is history, I guess.
Yes, here. My job is to hire people that are better at the job than me. That's number one. Because the option of just working late, where I can just do it, I can learn it very quickly, that option goes out of the window when you have a baby. And it changed the business completely. Also, in preparation for my time off, which by the way never happened, but I was assuming that I will go on maternity, I closed down all of the unnecessary tasks and projects that were happening at the business. Now looking back, it seems that I was so wasteful, not only with my own time, but also with company's resources before I became mother. When you become a parent, something really rational kicks in your brain, where all of a sudden it's either there or not there, because that's what is required to be a good parent, a mother or a father. Yeah. You look at things differently. It's no longer just something fun to do. It's not about whether I enjoy it or not. You've got a different level of responsibility. So it changed me. It may not be like that for everybody, but it did change my whole outlook on how I run business, what is the business role, not just in the industry, but also what investors, employees, and the board expects from the business. Yeah. So that was one thing that absolutely changed me. But also you mentioned that we don't ask men about it. And yes, I really didn't like being asked that before I had a child, but now it's part of my experience.
I just want to, I do a female leadership podcast, so I don't get to ask men as much, but I think that it is something that I would like. So no matter if you're a mother or a father, asking how having your child maybe changed you as a leader. But I also think that as often mothers do carry a different weight in the household, not necessarily all the time, it really depends on families, but that prioritization of like, I either have time for it or I don't have time for it. That I think I have seen in mothers, even more ruthlessly maybe, just because of the amount of stuff. Like the moment that you have a to-do list, the length of, I don't know, this long, both work and personal and everything, you quickly, either it's getting done or not done, like, and you do, like, and that prioritization is a real power and a real tool for business as well.
Absolutely. It teaches you that some things just won't get done, and that's okay. And it's okay. And also, motherhood, I'm still on that journey, but I'm a recovering perfectionist. It's the...
I love that.
It's one of the addictions that society accepts. And it shouldn't be acceptable. Perfectionism kills, first of all, the joy of getting anything done.
Yeah.
It kills the joy for the team and for the person doing this. And it's in the old cliche, it's the opposite of done. But really, doing things, however they can be done in the space of time with the resources available, is better than not doing it.
Yeah.
Or not doing it at all and then be fine with it as well. So motherhood encouraged me to get help. I actually went on a course to give up perfectionism, and it's not easy. Mm-hmm. I know it's widely accepted by the society that being perfectionist is something good, and I often hear people at the interview saying that my biggest flaw is being a perfectionist.
I know.
And I'm sorry, then you won't belong to the team because that position is taken and we don't need anymore. Thank you very much. Let's just get it done as best as we can and not aim for perfection.
So I think that's one, it's especially because it's encouraged by society, especially of women, to almost like aspire for this perfection and being perfect and it's how we're supposed to be seen. So that's one of the reasons it's accepted, because it's almost underlined encouraged. And then there is the idea of, people have been saying it in interviews, so that, because it's not a bad thing. It's like, my flaw is a perfectionist, and yeah.
It's a big flaw. Actually, for me, this has been a thing that was really stopping me from
trying,
but forward. Also going in front of the clients. You need to go with if you feel good about your product when you're pitching it, then you've left it too late.
Yeah.
You really need to feel discomfort that it's not ready, it may all fall apart. Get the feedback as soon as possible. Yeah. We spend so much time trying to get customer feedback before we build, so then when we present it, it's gonna be all perfect. It's the wrong way around. You build it the way you think the market needs it, and then you show it, close your eyes, and get feedback. And it will be negative, and that's what's so valuable. There is actually no value in positive feedback. Mm-hmm. What value does positive feedback provide?
Except, I guess we all desire it.
Okay.
It can, to a degree, reassure you, at least if something is working there, maybe this is the right path. However, you learn more from negative feedback. So I do agree with you. In general, just telling you, this is great, is the worst thing. Because it's empty. It's basically you have nothing to say.
Well, I disagree. I agree to a point. I disagree. A few years ago, I would completely agree with you, but now I believe that staying in the game is good enough of a reinforcement for tech businesses that are innovating. Just staying in the game. If you have enough money to keep going for the next month, next couple of months, then that's your reinforcement. Mm-hmm. And get all the negative feedback, all the barriers, identify it, all the weak points. That should be the focus.
Yeah.
and still somehow finding motivation to keep going.
Yeah.
That's how you build great products.
Yeah.
Sales teaches you that certain amount of no's will lead to a yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's part of absolutely essential training for any business person or otherwise.
I mean, and that ability, especially in startup, to take the no's, learn from the no's, and then implement them in order to get that yes is even more important. But that's where I think salespeople, it is a process. I've seen people either really flourish from that or really get super discouraged. So it's really about personality, maybe more BD versus sales, like different.
I've got a view on that. So the reason why you will get really discouraged from the no's is when you spend too much time listening to your clients what they want. Mm-hmm. And then you build it and then they say no. That's discouraging because you feel like you responded to the requirements versus having a hypothesis how this can be done in the way that you have a conviction is the best way for the market, and then you present it to the world, to the industry, and then get no's. So they tell you no, but that's your idea. You still have the conviction. The relationship with the market continues. Maybe it's the different sector that you need to go after. You know, whatever that no is giving you, it's always a direction. Mm-hmm. And I think that we are too focused on, and the corporates are doing that. They're listening to their clients and then trying to innovate by building what the client said, and then are discouraged because the clients actually didn't want what they said they want.
I think it's the difference between listening to what they said but what they actually need. And there is different ways of listening. So a lot of the time we'll go in meetings and try to listen to the in-between. So it's not just people not always able to say what they want. Also, if you're talking about empty spaces, it's very hard for people to really communicate in blank pages. Most people, the worst thing you can do to someone is force them, okay, here's a blank page, add it. It's very hard. You have to start it for them. You have to help them see what, and then not necessarily listen to what they say, but listen to what is actually there behind the word. And then you can do a much better job actually answering what they need. And that's really hard because it's not about a survey and it's not about, a lot of people, yes, some of it can be useful, some of it can be done, and if it's a very obvious, simple truth, then maybe you can learn from it. I'm not saying anything against research, my bread and butter. However, when you're doing research as well, you discover a lot of the time that some truths are hard to get out of people.
True.
And there is the fact that a lot of people can't really tell you what they need or what they want, and it's hard for them to describe it, and you need to listen a bit more carefully, and there are keywords or key emotions or things that will give you a better clue than the actual words. And maybe because I've always worked in a very international environment where people have language barriers and you have to listen not just to the words, but what people actually try to tell you. I developed this intuition, or try to work on it, not always get it right, that's when you let go of perfection, but try to really read between that nuanced line beyond words, which, its own challenge. But that's where I find things a bit more effective, at least when I receive feedback, because they don't try to take things so literal, or they say that they mean that, but more like, they said that, I think they mean that. Because I have a feeling, also within the context of everything else, this is actually what they mean they need. And that's normally get us to the better location. Still, we'll have debates after a call. It's where 3 people on a call, 3 people heard something very different. And I guess that's communication in general.
Absolutely.
This is definitely more than sofa and table.
Yes.
Rolling? Okay. Last question. Legacy. I think also something maybe you think of also as a parent. Not true. I'm not a parent. Well, except for my doggy baby. But I mean, fluffy babies doesn't always count. Depends on who you ask. But what would you, one thing that you would like to leave for, as a woman, as a leader, what would you want to teach maybe others and leave as a legacy behind?
I think the best legacy we can leave as female leaders is to succeed through a successful exit, so we can then invest in other women. I cannot tell you how much easier it is for me to talk to a female Polish VC compared to an American man.
Yeah.
It's just how it is. So if we want more women to have the opportunity that I had, we need female VCs or female investors that invest in those women. Mentorship is great, but ultimately cash is what gets the businesses started and propels them forward. So we owe it to other women to succeed and lead the companies to successful exits.
That's a very good point. Do you feel like there's enough currently investments in women? There is always room for more, of course, but do you see the improvement there has been?
Absolutely. But it's a journey.
Yeah.
And I, for one, want to be the one that will encourage more women to do what I've done, and just make it easier. I'm not saying it cannot be done. I'm not saying you cannot raise money from male-led VC. You can.
Yeah. But it's harder.
It's harder. And does it have to be that hard?
Do you feel it's harder for women to raise money from men?
Naturally.
Yeah.
That's the key answer is in that naturally it's more difficult because even women VCs will sometimes prefer to invest in male-led businesses.
How come?
Yeah, we'll have to ask them. But why? Because traditionally, if you were to make your business successful, you would have to pitch to other men for that business. So that made the investment more secure. Whereas nowadays, we've got women in decision-making positions, for example, head of marketing or head of brand, and I know how much easier it is for me to pitch my solution to a female decision maker. It's just easier. I'm not saying that I don't have male clients. It's just that it's so much easier to connect, go to lunch with a fellow marketeer that is also a parent, as opposed to go out for a beer with a male brand manager. It's just how the world works.
I mean, I had some meetings getting my nails done. We had nail sessions together, with head of because we both needed to get our nails done. It might as well.
Whilst your male counterpart may have played golf.
Yeah.
So again, it's just some of those natural skills we've got. So some of us play tennis, others play golf. Is it unfair that the client that you have plays tennis and you are also a good tennis player and you go for a session? Is that unfair to others? Maybe, but just that is just how it works. And I guess because in the past more men were in the decision-making positions, it would make sense to invest in male-led businesses. But that is changing, and it has changed. Yes, I mean, we just have to play to our strengths. But if you were asking about my legacy, and I will want to give more women opportunity to start a business, take the leap of faith, and do what I've done because it was a good choice.
Invest in women. I think that's a wonderful message to conclude with. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you had fun. I had a lot of fun.
It was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you as well. And for the full episode and many more, please go to www.womenliftingwomen.io. And I can't wait to see you in the next episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.